On this edition of Business at 9, coming to you live from our studios of ET Now in Mumbai. First up, we're talking about Brent crude oil prices, which have fallen. They've gone below the crucial $70 to the barrel mark, and that's happening for the first time since December 2021. This on the back of increased demand concerns, global demand. This decline coming after OPEC has cut its forecast of global oil demand for 2024. And so in this monthly report, it is saying that they're expecting oil demand to grow by 2.02 million barrels a day, which means it's lower from that earlier growth estimate of 2.11 million barrels per day. And OPEC has also gone ahead and cut the 2025 global demand growth estimate to 1.74 million barrels a day. Besides this, there are concerns over supply disruptions in the US because of that tropical storm called Francine. And there is the soft Chinese economic data, which is also making these crude oil prices slide down further. Let's get further perspective on crude oil prices and where they are headed. Farah Mourad is Senior Market Analyst at Equity Group, and she's joining us. Farah, good to have you on Business at 9. What's your sense of crude oil prices now? How much lower are they likely to slip from this point?
First thing, thank you for having me. And actually, it's late as well in UAE, and I was checking the oil before leaving the office and coming to my home, actually. And what I noticed, what we were expecting to at least see a bit of a rebound for some reasons that you've mentioned. For example, the hurricane getting closer, potential production cut a little bit. Then we have Libya's oil that's no longer in the market. Then we have OPEC Plus deciding to postpone any raise in their production for 2 more months. And we were on a level that was kind of a local support. And this is why we're expecting a bit of a rebound, especially China. Okay, it is the biggest influence on the oil prices right now. But today we had sort of good news coming from China. So this decline, I think it's surprising. And it really tells that investors have a gloomy image of a potential rebound in demands for oil.
Emerging market like India, is this a net positive, the way crude oil prices are sliding down?
I mean, it is positive for inflation. It is definitely positive for the US economy. It is definitely positive for economies that suffered from inflation pressure, especially when it comes to oil prices. So that would definitely have some good effect, especially that now the major, I would say, incident or hazard in the markets is a spike in oil prices, with everything happening and the interest rates and moving forward to a less hawkish stance and interest rate, to have a spike on oil, especially oil that is not really related directly and to how central banks would move forward. Definitely less expensive oil is something that would benefit central banks around the globe, and probably growth as well. It's a healthy sign for especially countries that are suffering from high inflation. It is not the case for maybe some countries that rely heavily on oil production, but overall, it is less inflation pressure for sure.
China being one of the largest importers of oil, India is as well. But going ahead,
Yes.
if you're looking at soft demand coming through from China and the data from there, the manufacturing data that has been on a downtrend. So going ahead with this kind of outlook for oil demand in the future, what does it really say about global growth? Are there real concerns that are percolating through, and in the time that we're talking about US economy as well, at a time that the Fed is going to decide its course of action later on this month itself about interest rates, how much of a bearing is this going to have? What does it really tell you about the way the global economic growth story is developing?
I mean, if we want to check the data, so far, we're not really afraid of, or it's not showing any signs of a deep recession. And especially for countries, there's a huge different landscape when I want to discuss different countries, especially developed and big countries. Let's say growth is probably going to slow down. That's the reality. But we are moving to lower interest rates, which would definitely benefit countries that suffered from really high US dollar. Prices such as oil would benefit as well from a lower US dollar. And whether this would show that we are moving to lower growth, but some countries do have the potential to strive in this, I would say, dynamic, especially countries like India, China, these countries who have good quality of products, they have really big markets around the globe, and they have probably a cheaper product than other countries and very competitive. India might be also very good, and we are seeing the spike in the stock prices because it is a good alternative for countries that maybe would want to step away from having deeper relationship with China. India shows as a really good competitor. So some countries would definitely benefit from lower growth, lower possibility to spend, and seeking maybe more competitive prices with good quality. And here's where I think some countries like India, like Mexico, for example, would benefit, especially if tension would rise between, let's say, China and some European countries or the US.
Very quickly, because we're trying to assess the impact of falling crude oil prices on marketing margins of oil marketing companies as well. We certainly do that back home. How do you think that's going to play out?
I mean, as I told you, I genuinely don't believe to this extent that we would see a bleeding in the prices. More than that, we know OPEC plus, too many countries, too many players would really need prices to be a bit above that, above $70 and $75. Saudi Arabia, for example, would really need prices to be around 98 for their dollar per barrel. So it is going to affect the margin for companies in this sector. But overall, I think it's a good sign to have lower prices as long as it's not bleeding below the levels that we're seeing today.
Farah Mourad, Senior Market Analyst at Equity Group. Such a pleasure getting in your perspective. Thanks very much for joining us. We hope you had a safe ride home.
If you like this video, then like, share and subscribe to ET Now.